an affluent suburb, an unlikely place for a horrifying murder.
I knew the kid was gonna get killed, and I didn't stop it.
By 1984, teen violence, along with teen drug use, began to appear in towns all across America. No town was too small. And for 4 young lives, one night of malice and misfortune would forever change their community and shock the nation.
Physically, it was the worst crime I've ever seen.
Media around the world reported Satan in the suburbs of New York City.
These kids had engaged in some pretty bizarre behavior with their satanic cultism.
Teenagers out of control.
The amount of drugs was really, truly extraordinary.
And no one to blame but the devil himself.
A lot of people didn't look at this murder and take it as a wake-up call, say, we have a problem here.
It's a typical summer night in a typical American suburb. 4 teenage kids are just killing time in their usual way by slipping into the woods to do some drugs. The 4 had been here before. It was one of their favorite spots to sit around and do absolutely nothing. But this night was somehow different from all others. This time, it was different.
There was 3 crows flying all around us, and Ricky did say out at that time that Satan's with us. I'm high at the time. I'm on 10 hits of acid, so I was like, yeah, he is, whatever.
Ricky was 17-year-old Ricky Kasso, no stranger to trouble. He had been busted for small-scale burglaries and other petty crimes. Known for his drug dealing and devotion to satanic rituals, Ricky's evening was about to get a whole lot more interesting. Lately, his problem was his so-called friend, Gary Lauwers. Word was he had stolen 10 bags of angel dust from Ricky. Ricky was out to get him. The night began like any other night in the woods. The 4 friends did what came naturally. They got high on drugs, enjoyed the nighttime sky, and got high some more. But what began as a party quickly turned into a nightmare.
I knew exactly what was going on, and I didn't stop it.
Four had entered the woods that night, but only 3 had come out. Whatever happened was to be a secret, but not for long. 2 weeks passed, but no one seemed to miss Gary Lauwers. Not his friends, certainly not the police, not even his parents. After all, Gary was a frequent runaway. From the outside, Gary's hometown looked so serene, but it was no ordinary place. His friends were no ordinary kids, and they had committed no ordinary crime. An eerie calm settled over the 3 remaining friends. Gary was gone, but in death, Ricky found him more interesting than ever. From the looks of it, he felt no remorse. And instead of a compulsion to confess, Ricky felt the need to share his deed with his friends. He led 2 tours to the body. Their friends looked on with morbid curiosity as maggots colonized the remains. Ricky seemed satisfied with his work and proud to show it off. In those 2 weeks, a dozen people saw what was left of Gary Lauwers, but no one breathed a word of it. Maybe they thought Ricky would kill them too. Located just an hour and a half outside of New York City, the predominantly white, upper-middle-class suburban town of Northport, New York, appealed to parents looking for good schools and clean living. Problem was, their kids were bored. And in the summer of 1984, the devil made work for idle hands. After about a week, Ricky lost interest in his departed friend. He and Jimmy decided to close the show and bury him in a shallow grave.
And when we went to kick it in the grave that we dug, the head actually fell off. I mean, it fell off.
With Gary buried, the thrill of their act began to fade. Boredom threatened to settle in once again. So Jimmy and Ricky looked forward to their next adventure. They left Northport and headed for California. They planned to survive by selling drugs. The next day, local police received an anonymous call. A young woman said she knew where Gary Lauwers was buried. She said she knew who killed him. Only problem was the police didn't know that anybody named Gary Lauwers was even missing. They thought it was a crank call. When the officer pressed the caller for her name, she nervously hung up. Ricky and Jimmy were having the time of their lives, but they had completed only 160 miles of their cross-country odyssey when it was time to stop and raise more money.
And when we got up there, we sold some mescaline real quick, and we bought a car for $50, a junker.
Neither one of them had an inkling of what was going on back home. The anonymous call was verified, and an investigation began. Police were led to a wooded area just on the outskirts of town.
The area in question was fairly big, as a wooded area and kind of tough to deal with. We brought 4 canine units with us. We sent 2 dogs in at a time. One dog did a hit, found what they considered to be a body.
Police soon came upon a shocking discovery.
So we walked over to where the dogs had hit, and we examined it very carefully and observed a blood-soaked scalp. The
remains of Lauwers' shallow grave removed all doubt about the legitimacy of the mysterious phone call. A frantic search was on for the killers. Meanwhile, the unsuspecting duo decided to head back home. They had lost interest in their road trip and wanted to party with their friends on the 4th of July.
We went downtown Northport, and we tripped out, and Ricky was handing out mescaline to people, and we were all getting high and everything.
When the party was over, Jimmy and Ricky went back to their car to get some sleep. Early the next morning, the police received a report of a suspicious vehicle. A lone officer responded. To his surprise, the suspects were helplessly asleep inside, without a care in the world. But having seen what these kids had done, he took no chances and called for backup. Authorities knew the pair could be capable of anything, especially if they were high on drugs.